You are looking at a dead man. That's right. You've never seen a dead man speak before, have you? Or maybe you've seen someone die, or maybe you've seen a dead body at a funeral, but you've never seen anyone who was dead for 4 days, alive, talking and walking around. Yes, I'm Lazarus, the man that Jesus raised from the dead. My sisters Mary and Martha and I, we play a very prominent role in the gospel story. I'm not sure, and we play that role as probably more prominent than you would even know. I'm not sure how we became so close to Jesus, my family and Jesus. We had known Joseph and Mary for quite some time, and we had done quite a few things together with them. But I guess it's maybe through that contact that we became so close. So it was only natural that when Jesus started his public ministry, that our home became his home. You know, he had no home after he left Nazareth. People would ask him, "Can we follow you? We would like to follow you." And he would always tell them that the foxes have holes, the birds of the air, they have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. But he always knew that he had a home at our house. And so whenever he needed a place to come, he and his disciples would come and visit, and they would stay the night, and they would be our guests. It was a place for him to come and relax. He could get away from everything, at least for a little while. I wish I could tell you what it was like to be the friend of Jesus. He was an unbelievable person. Oh, I know that he was the Messiah. He was the Son of God. And we knew that, but we believed it. Also, Mary would tell us the story about the circumstances at his birth. And we had seen him do many miracles. But to us, he was just Jesus, our friend, the best friend that you could ever have. What more could I tell you about Jesus? So whenever he would come over, he was always lending a helping hand. He was a carpenter, and if anything needed to be fixed, he would fix it. And we're always fascinated by the way that he understood Scripture, the way that he could tell us what the words meant. Anything that seemed so complicated, he would make it so simple. Things that I would struggle with became crystal clear. And any time that he would come by, he knew that he could relax and stay. So I guess you're curious about what actually happened to me. Well, a lot of what I'm going to tell you is from Mary and Martha. But the one thing that I do know, the one thing that I remember, is that I was very sick. I was very sick. And I remember that it all started with a fever, and I was weak. And I went to Mary and I told her that I was going to go and lie down and that I had a fever. And she got a cloth and she put cold water on it and she put it on my head. And oh, I got to tell you, that felt so good. But that fever wouldn't leave. And I laid there for days. Nothing would change. And I could tell by the look on people's faces that my condition was quite serious. And I heard them talking that they were going to send word to Jesus. And I knew what they were thinking because we had seen Jesus do so many miracles. He has healed people from their illnesses and their diseases. Wouldn't he be able to help me? But that's pretty much all that I remember. Shortly after that, I died. But if you were to ask me what would happen to me after I died, I could tell you that the funerals in that part of the country were pretty much all the same. They would dress you in linen cloth, which the Hebrew translation is traveling dress. Quite appropriate, don't you think? And then they would wrap your hands and your feet in burial bandages. And then after talking to Mary and Martha, that's exactly what happened to me. And after I was dead, they would have buried me right away because the hot, hot sun would start to decay the body so quickly. And then I would be buried down in the family cave, which is just a little bit down from where we lived. That's pretty much what happened according to the story. But what happened next was what I don't remember. I guess that Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that I was sick, and they hoped that he would come running right away, but he didn't. He didn't get there until 4 days after my death. Martha heard that Jesus was coming down the road, and she ran up to meet him. And she's sorry about it now, but she blurted out, "Lord, if you had been here, Lazarus would not have died." And they talked for a little while. And then Martha went to get Mary, and Mary came up, and exactly the same thing she said to Jesus. And they talked for a little while about what was going on. He never did come to the house, at least not right away. And as they were standing up on the road and they were talking, Jesus was quite distraught. He was very upset, and he wept bitterly. And then he asked them to take him to the tomb. And they took him, and as he stood in front of the tomb, he said, "Roll away the stone." And they said, "Oh, no, you can't do that. The stench of death would be too great." And a lot of people thought that he just wanted to have one last look at his old friend Lazarus. And then he looked to the sky, and he prayed to God, and after he prayed, he cried out. But this is what I remember. I remember this definitely. It was kind of a voice that seemed so far away, but it was so loud. "Lazarus, come out." And I opened my eyes, but I was weak, and it was so dark. But I noticed that there was a light coming from somewhere. And I sat up, and I turned my head, and I saw that the light was coming in through the entrance. I looked around, and I saw all these skeletons. I knew where I was. I was in a burial tomb. But what was going on? I knew I was sick. But was I buried alive? Why would they do that? But if I was dead, what was happening now? And I stood up, and I noticed that I was wearing the traveling clothes and the burial bandages on my hands and my feet. And I went to the door, the bright light that was coming in. I looked, and there was this huge crowd all around, and they were all staring at me. And then I saw him, Jesus, with his arms outstretched, with a big smile looking at me. And then I noticed that people were doing different things. One lady fainted, and she fell over. Other people started singing and dancing and praying and clapping and just running around. They were so excited. Somebody came up and patted me on the back. Other people kept their distance. They were not sure what was going on. It was kind of freaking them out, I think. Then we started walking towards the house. Everyone was talking at the same time. I couldn't understand anybody. But once we got to the house, Mary and Martha, they told me that story, and they told it to me over and over again. I kept asking them to tell me because I couldn't believe what they were telling me. That was the most unbelievable miracle I had ever heard. It was amazing. You think things would get better after that. But they didn't, because the Jews stopped going to the synagogue. They were following Jesus, and the religious leaders at the time were beside themselves. They had made a plot to kill Jesus. But not only that, they were plotting to kill me. I was the evidence of his miracle. And their thought was, let's get rid of the evidence, get rid of the miracle worker, and everything will go back to normal. It's not what happened. They plotted to kill Jesus. Then soon they arrested him. And then next there I was at the foot of the cross, watching him die and hearing his last words. There was nothing that they could have done to me at that time. Nothing. I stayed there and I listened. I wish I could tell you things got better after that, but they still plotted to kill me. Our worlds all fell apart. They collapsed after Jesus died. We didn't know what to do. And then soon, in a couple of days, we heard that Jesus was alive, that he was around, that he was talking to people. And then we saw him. That was the best day of my life, to see him alive again. And you think things would get better from then, but they didn't. They still plotted to kill me. They wanted to get rid of the evidence. And why wouldn't they have believed? If they had been at my tomb and they had seen what Jesus had done for me, wouldn't they think that God would and could raise his own son from the death? But again, there was nothing that they could do to discourage me from continuing to spread the good news. Because I was the only one that had witnessed Jesus turn death into life.